Nancy Pelosi did an interview with Wolf Blitzer, one of the most boring people in America, and they spoke about the prospect of a stimulus bill, and it got really heated. Now, this is a very, very, very rare instance. You know, I'm well known for beating up on Wolf because he's like, there's a chance he's actually a robot, but for the first time in his career, he justified his career here. And he really, without even trying, kind of dismantled Nancy Pelosi. So I'm going to show you the whole clip. I think is like 13 minutes. What I did is I took the parts that I think are most important and most interesting, put them together, and I sped it up a little bit because it would have been a really long clip if I didn't speed it up a little bit. So I made it 1.25 speed. So anyway, that was just a heads up about that. But anyway, let's take a look and then we'll come back and I have a lot to say about it.
As you know, there are Americans who are being evicted from their homes. They can't pay the rent. Many Americans are waiting in food lines for the first time in their lives. Can you look them in the eye, Madam Speaker, and explain why you don't want to accept the president's latest stimulus offer?
Well, because, thank you very much, Wolf, and I hope you'll ask the same question of the Republicans about why they don't really want to meet the needs of the American people. But let me say to those people, because all of my colleagues, we represent these people. I have for over 30 years represented my constituents. I know what their needs are. I listen to them, and their needs are not addressed in the president's proposal. So when you say to me, why don't you accept theirs? Why don't they accept ours? Our legislation is there to do three things primarily: to honor our workers, honor our heroes, our healthcare workers, our police and fire first responders, our teachers, our transportation, sanitation, food workers, the people who make our lives work. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without them. Many of them have risked their lives so that to save lives, and now they will lose their jobs because McConnell says let the states go bankrupt.
Excuse me for interrupting, Madam Speaker, but they really need the money right now, and even members of your own. But even members of your own caucus. Even members of your own caucus, Madam Speaker, want to accept this deal. $1.8 trillion. Congressman Ro Khanna, for example. But let me just quote Ro Khanna, a man you know well. I assume you admire him. He's a Democrat. And he just said this. He said, people in need can't wait until February. $1.8 trillion is significant and more than twice the Obama stimulus. Make a deal. Put the ball in McConnell court. So what do you say to Ro Khanna?
What I say to you is, I don't know why you're always an apologist, and many of your colleagues apologize for the Republican position. Ro Khanna, that's nice. That isn't what we're going to do, and nobody's waiting till February. I want this very much now because people need help now. But it's no use giving them a false thing just because the president wants to put a check with his name on it in the mail, that we should not be doing all we can to help people pay the rent, put food on the table, to enhance benefits, that they don't lose their jobs if they're state and local, we're talking about the consequences of a pandemic, the symptoms of a problem that the president refuses to address.
But you know,
and that is the coronavirus.
We know the problem out there, but there are millions of Americans who have lost their jobs. They can't pay the rent. Their kids need the food.
That's right, and that's what we're trying to get done.
$1.8 trillion, and the president just tweeted, stimulus, go big or go home. He wants even more right now, so why not work out a deal with him, and don't let the perfect, as they say here in Washington, be the enemy of the good.
Well, I will not let the wrong be the enemy of the right.
What's wrong with $1.8 trillion?
You know what? Do you have any idea what the difference is between the spending that they have in their bill and that we have in our bill? Do you realize that they have come back and said all these things for child tax credits and earned income tax credits, or helping people who have lost their jobs, are eliminated in their bill? Do you realize they pay no respect to the fact that child care is very important for people whose children cannot go to school because they're doing remote learning, and yet they minimize the need for child care, which is the threshold with which people, mothers and fathers, can go to work if they have that? Do you have any idea of how
that's precisely why, Madam Speaker,
they're concerned?
That's why it's so important right now. Yesterday I spoke to Andrew Yang, who says the same thing. It's not everything you want, but there's a lot there.
Honest to God, you really, I can't get over it, because Andrew Yang, he's lovely. Ro Khanna, he's lovely. They are not negotiating this situation. They have no idea of the particulars.
Let's hope they get a vaccine. And Madam Speaker, yes. I certainly respect you, but I also respect Ro Khanna. I respect Andrew Yang. I respect members of the Democrats who are members of the problem solvers. They want a deal because so many people right now
Well,
are
the problem
suffering.
solvers, by the way, don't have any earned income tax credit or child tax credit in their proposal either. But let's not go into that.
Yeah,
you evidently do not respect the chair chairman of the committees who wrote these bills.
I respect
and
all of you.
I wish you would respect the knowledge that goes into getting meeting the needs of the American people. But again, you've been on a jag defending the administration all this time with no knowledge of the difference between our two bills. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that to you in person.
Madam Speaker, these are incredibly difficult times right now, and we'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for joining us.
We'll leave it on the vote that you are not right on this, Wolf, and I hate to say that to you. But I feel confident about it, and I feel confident about my colleagues, and I feel confidence in my chairs.
And it's not about me. It's about millions of Americans who can't put food on the table, who can't pay the rent,
and
who are
we
having
represent
trouble,
them, and we represent them,
getting
and
by
we represent
these
them,
long food
and we
lines that we're
represent
seeing.
them.
I know
we
you
know
are.
them.
I'm just saying.
We represent them, and we know them.
As we say,
we know them. We represent them.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
It is nowhere near perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Always the case, but we're not even close to the good.
All right, let's see what happens, because every day is critically important.
When she kept saying, we represent them, we represent them, we represent them, I looked it up because I thought, I wasn't exactly sure on the numbers, but it's just 27% of Democrats that wanted Nancy Pelosi to continue to be the speaker. And her overall approval rating is 37%, which puts her below Donald Trump. So people don't think you're representing them. That's the first point I want to make. Now, there's actually a split on the left, believe it or not, with Nancy Pelosi's approach here. So there are plenty of people on the left who are saying, well, hold on now. We always yell at Nancy Pelosi to fight harder, to grow a spine, to negotiate in a tougher way. And now she's finally doing it, and the left is turning on her? So that makes no sense. You have to pick. Do you want her to be a hardline negotiator? Or do you want her to compromise and take the half-measure deal? And so there's a lot of people who are pointing out, like, they're trying to hypocrisy burn the left by saying, you guys always say you want her to draw hard lines, and now she is, and you're against it. So which is it? Now, the reason why I don't think that criticism is legitimate is because my fear is, I don't think it's that Nancy Pelosi is taking a hardline negotiation stance and asking for more. I think she doesn't want any stimulus deal at all before the election because she fears it could hurt Joe Biden's chances of winning and it could help Trump. That's my fear. Now listen, that's speculation, but I think it's educated speculation because of all the other surrounding facts. So, one of the things is it's very likely that if Nancy Pelosi accepted this Trump-Mnuchin deal, that Mitch McConnell would block it anyway. And there's rumblings in the GOP Senate caucus where they're all like, we're not in favor of this. We're not in favor of another stimulus bill and it's the typical nonsense. Oh my God, the debt. Oh my God, the deficit. Oh my God, how can we afford it? We believe in small government. It's all that stuff. And Mitch McConnell, behind the scenes, he secretly knows that Trump is toast in the upcoming election. So he's like, I just want to cement my legacy, and my legacy is getting a right-wing lockdown on the court system. So all I care about is getting Amy Coney Barrett, a.k.a. Waffle Coney, to get on the court. That's all I care about. That's what I want to focus on completely. So we know that Mitch McConnell's probably not going to accept this $1.8 trillion stimulus deal. So if Pelosi's, let's say, hypothetically negotiating for a $2.2 trillion stimulus deal, that's also going to die. And in fact, that has a higher likelihood of dying when it reaches McConnell. So why would you not take this deal and then be like, the person blocking progress here is actually, it's not Donald Trump. It's not Steve Mnuchin. It ain't me. It ain't the Democrats. It's Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans. So now you guys have to vote these idiots out in the upcoming election. Why would you not put the onus on them? It makes no sense. That's exactly what I would do. And then furthermore, for people saying like, she's just negotiating tough, you have to look at her specifics and what her issues were with this bill, because she's changed it a bunch. Like in this interview with Wolf Blitzer, she makes it seem like she wants more in terms of a child tax credit or the earned income tax credit or whatever it might be. Previously, she said, no, the reason I'm against this is because there's no testing and contact tracing for COVID. Now, when I hear that, I just think that's a flimsy excuse because you could just try to do that in another bill. Probably won't get anywhere because of the Republicans. But again, you could try to do that in a separate bill. I don't know why that has to be married up with the economic relief. Furthermore, the other thing she said, which is something I agree with her on, is she goes, well, there's a liability shield in there, protection for corporations from lawsuits, and I want to get rid of that. So get rid of that, and I'm not accepting this deal until you do. Now, there is a reasonable debate to be had about that. Honestly, I think because of how severe the hurt is in the country right now, you can bite the bullet on the liability shield because the relief that people are getting, like this bill, apart from one or two provisions, is just flat out good. Like it's not bad. So here, let me tell you some more. I already told you what's in it, but I want to refresh your memory. $400 a week to 20 plus million unemployed people, $4,400 to tens of millions of families, many suffering pay cuts. That's for everybody who makes $150,000 a year or less. That's a lot of families in this country. Airline, restaurant, and hotel workers, a shot to hold on. This is from Jeff Stein, by the way, of the Washington Post. $300 billion to struggling local governments. So that's what's in the bill. And he also says, if we don't get a stimulus bill, tens of thousands of airline workers are going to get laid off. Tens of thousands. No federal supplement, unemployment benefits for 20 plus million unemployed people. Severe cuts and layoffs for restaurants and hotel workers. And checks 2.0 don't go out to millions who are facing pay cuts. And then another scenario he lays out, let me see if I could find it for you now because I didn't bring this up before the show, but listen to this. He says, bleak but possible scenario I hear from people. Number 1, no stimulus deal by November 3rd, the election. Number 2, Biden wins. Trump loses interest in a deal with Congress because he's a lame duck and he's on his way out. So no additional stimulus until January 20th at the earliest. And then there's a new wave of cases from November to February causing severe economic damage, just as D.C. is most paralyzed. And then on top of that, I'll add to that, Joe Biden gets into power, and then you have an even lower chance of any Republicans being okay or signing on to a stimulus deal. Because historically, this is what happens when the Democrats have power. They obstruct everything, like everything. So literally our best bet to get any relief to people would be to accept the $1.8 trillion deal, which again is not that bad a bill. It's actually really good, bar minus one or two provisions. And then you immediately flip the onus onto Mitch McConnell. So let's say Mitch McConnell rejects it, which he probably will. Well, then you get to see what Trump is really made of. Because Trump can play Mr. Tough Guy, knowing that he needs this to have any chance at re-election. And even if he gets it, even if we get this through, he's still probably not going to get re-elected. But he knows it could give him maybe a 2 or 3 point bump in the polls. So then you'll see if Trump prods McConnell and if Trump publicly calls out McConnell, like on Twitter, to say he's the problem, he's the one blocking this. Mitch, I'm declaring war on you. Now, it's possible he does that because he wants to save his ass for the upcoming election, or it's possible that Trump is Trump and he's a cuck and he falls in line and he doesn't really fight because he does tend to listen to the last person, whoever the hell was in the room. So if Mnuchin's got his ear and says, no, we really need this, then he might launch an attack on Mitch McConnell. But bottom line is, you have to put the ball in their court. Not accepting this deal is honestly madness. And then now you do an interview with Wolf Blitzer where Wolf Blitzer's like, people are beyond struggling right now. If you read Reddit unemployment, you'll cry. Like I almost cried reading Reddit unemployment. People are hurting so bad. And she's not accepting this deal, which is a good deal. And again, I think the reason is because she doesn't want any stimulus before the election because she fears, and she may be in contact with people from Biden's campaign, and so they're telling her, don't do it for this reason. But I really believe they think, if we get stimulus checks, they go out, they might have Trump's name on it because he's insistent on that, right? This might give him a bump in the polls, and it might hurt Joe in the upcoming election. So I think for purely political reasons, she's not accepting this deal. And then she goes on CNN and basically shows the world how elitist she is, right? Like, if you go back and watch that, it is dripping with contempt and arrogance. Just like scolding Andrew Yang and Ro Khanna and Wolf Blitzer. You don't even know what's in the deal. Actually, we have a good idea because there's been plenty of reporting on it. I think Ro Khanna does know a lot about what's in the deal. I think Andrew Yang does know a lot about what's in the deal. By the way, Pelosi's daughter publicly called Andrew Yang sexist because Andrew Yang was saying, listen, you got to take the deal. We don't, like, this isn't a question. People are dying out there. They're dying. Like, you have to accept the deal. And instead of addressing on the substance, they smear him as sexist. And you could tell Nancy Pelosi, she's not responding on substance. It's just like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. You don't know what you're doing. Like, me and the people in these committees, like, we're the experts. Step aside. Dripping and oozing with elitism. Now, by the way, let's say hypothetically they come to a deal today and Nancy Pelosi gets more concessions, right? And again, not even clear exactly what concessions she's looking for because she changes her objections to the bill on a day-to-day basis. But let's say she gets more concessions. Well, then we have arguably a $2.2 trillion stimulus bill. She accepts it. It goes to McConnell, and he's even more likely to reject it. And most importantly, we've dragged our feet for days more, meaning more people cannot pay the bills. So, like, you're inflicting so much more hurt and suffering because that deal was on the table and you didn't accept it. So, like, even if she accepts a bigger deal, let's say, they actually negotiate something, they accept a bigger deal, it's even more likely to get struck down, which further points me to my original thought, which is, I think she's just stalling, and she's stalling on purpose because she thinks any stimulus might help Trump, and she doesn't care about the consequences for the American people. That's what I think. Now, you're well within your rights to call me a conspiracy theorist. You're well within your rights to say, you know, actually she's negotiating in good faith. Hey, man, that's fine. You know, I do think that there are reasonable disagreements on this, but what I know for sure is the extreme pain and suffering going on right now in the country is not being addressed. You know what? The final point I'll make is there's another thing you could do. There's another thing you could do if you're critical of how this has all unfolded. Nancy and the House Democrats can get together and say, we're going to pass a clean stimulus bill. Now, what that means is get rid of everything else and just do, what's the number they're using? $1,200 checks? I think that's the number. $1,200 checks every month until the end of the COVID crisis, okay? $1,200 checks for all Americans, or if you want to be more specific, which they probably would, they would say, okay, everybody under $150,000 a year in income. $1,200 checks every month, under $150,000, pass that overwhelmingly through the House, and then you, again, flip it on Trump, Mnuchin, and McConnell and say, listen, we did what we had to do for the American people. We just passed a clean stimulus bill. There's none of the other stuff that we disagree over. None of the other stuff is in this bill. It's as simple as it gets. It's direct relief to the American people who desperately need it. We just passed it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And this way, there's nothing they could point to that's like, you know, nominally something they have an objection over. Mnuchin and Trump are both for some sort of relief for the people. McConnell isn't. But again, that gets to us to the same place, which is you take the onus off of yourself and you do the right thing, and then you put the ball in their court. And then it's like, okay, I did everything I'm supposed to do. Now it's on you guys. And you can publicly pressure them. But no, instead, she's the one stonewalling. She's the one blocking. And now everybody's pointing at her like she's the problem. Or you know what? I take that back. Educated people on this are pointing at her like she's the problem. The reality is, and somebody pointed this out to me yesterday, and I think they might be right, even though she is sort of blocking it, people might still be blaming Trump because they don't follow the news that closely. And so that might be another reason why she's doing it, because she knows ultimately the president's going to get the blame. So if I block it, yeah, people are hurting, but that's going to help Joe further in the upcoming election. So listen, this is all incredibly cynical and gross, but it is what it is, man. It ain't pretty. She should take the deal, or she should do the clean stimulus bill, and then you go after Mitch McConnell. And listen, you want to talk about a bully pulpit? You got the president and Steve Mnuchin on your side and all the Democrats you can get if you call for it. And then you really flip the burden and help people, which is the most important point. People really do need this help so bad. So anyway, this interview went viral for obvious reasons. I really think that Wolf Blitzer, this is the best job he's ever done without even trying. He's just asking like the most obvious questions, and she gets apoplectic and angry and just drips with contempt, arrogance, and elitism.